Hello listeners, and welcome to this week's episode of the Cult Vault. One quick piece of news. I've decided to merge my conspiracy podcast with this one. After some feedback from listeners, it has come to my attention that some of you would like to hear some more unsolved mysteries, conspiracy theories, and more deep dives on cults throughout history. So I hope to work on all of these things as well as deliver the interviews as usual. For now, I will share the episodes already released on the Conspiracy Vault podcast, and I'll do this weekly. So I apologise if you've listened to these, but I hope to have new material out on a monthly basis for this topic. Today I am revisiting a group we have already covered, SGI. I was privileged enough to get the chance to speak with Mark, who has spent a large amount of his life within SGI, and then spent another large amount of his life contesting the teachings of SGI. This interview was especially interesting because it explores the idea of someone leaving one movement and joining another, and although they both fall under the realm of Buddhism, one has proven to bring fulfilment and joy, the other has brought spiritual burnout, misery and isolation. I really hope you enjoy this interview with Mark as much as I did. I did have to record on a different program though, so I hope the audio quality isn't too different. Hi Mark, and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. This is a subject that I have covered previously in the podcast, but when you got in touch with me and told me about your experience and expertise, I couldn't pass up the opportunity to pick your brain and have an in-depth conversation with you about your time in the movement. So would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. My name is Mark Rogo. I am a Nichiren Buddhist as an independent. I was in the SGI for 19 years, and I've been refuting SGI for 23 years.
So that's a long time. I mean, I'm 27 years old, so that feels like that's a large portion of the time I've been on this planet.
Yes.
So for people who may not have tuned into the other episode, or for those who might not have heard of SGI before, can you just give the listeners sort of a brief breakdown of the belief system and values?
Soka Gakkai is considered a new religion. It was founded in 1933, right around then, by Tsunesabaru Makaguchi and Jose Toda. They chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren chanted Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, and it seems like a superficial difference, but it's really quite profound. They have approximately 10 million members, although they exaggerate. Let's put it that way. I think it's probably closer to 8 million members. They're approximately worth, with their real estate holdings, $300 billion.
Oh, wow.
Maybe more. Their leader is their sensei, their mentor is Daisaku Ikeda. And he claimed that the prime point of the Lotus Sutra, which is Myoho Renge Kyo, the prime point of the Lotus Sutra was the oneness of master and disciple, or mentor and disciple. But this is not true. The prime point of the Lotus Sutra is Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. They would have it seem that the only way you can attain happiness or enlightenment is through the Soka Gakkai, which is ridiculous. It's Namu Myoho Renge Kyo and the Lotus Sutra. So I'd like to say that. Okay. So this is obviously a topic that you're extremely passionate about. You've been focusing on all of these things included for a very, very long time. I noticed that you sign your correspondence. So I'm guessing you still practice a form of Buddhism? Nichiren Lotus Sutra Buddhism, yes.
Right. So the SGI started in 1933. And did you ever become an official member of SGI? And if you did, do you remember what year it was?
Yes, 1976, and I was a member for 19 years, till 1995.
Wow. So That's such a long time. So you joined this movement in 1976. Do you remember how you got introduced to SGI? Was it something you came across, or were you approached by somebody else who brought you into the movement?
My best friend brought me into the movement. His name is David Buck.
Okay, okay. And where is David today? Are you still in touch?
I haven't spoken to David in about 4 years. He calls me every once in a while trying
Okay.
to convert me back into the SGI. And I
Okay,
don't
okay.
know how wrong he is, that it's a cult of personality.
Right, right. Okay, okay. So you're in this movement for 19 years. Um, I mean, where are you speaking to us from today? And is that where you have stayed throughout your time during SGI and once you left?
I was with them in New York. Presently, I'm a physician in Oklahoma and quite happy.
And New York, would you say that's quite a large hub for members of SGI? Quite a lot of members in that area?
Yes, probably second most to California
Okay, okay,
and
okay.
Los Angeles. Yes.
So it's 1976. David Buck approaches you and he says, "Come to a meeting with me or some kind of class."
Well, he invited me actually to a party.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and the before the party, he sits me down in in front of a bunch of people, and they start chanting "Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo," like that. And I was like freaked out. And he puts a card in front of me and says, "Chant with us," you know. And then the party started, and it was a good party. And I was in a like everyone in almost everyone in SGI, they were in a bad place in their life, and they were love bombed. Cult technique for telling you how great you are and you're going to be the greatest and you can accomplish anything in your life and blah blah blah. And he kept at it for a couple weeks, and then I decided, what do I have to lose? I'll join.
Okay, okay. I mean, and then the party started and it's almost as if the chanting didn't happen.
Yeah, it was a regular party. You know, people were dancing to uh, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and different groups and stuff like that. That was
Right,
yes.
so you decided what have you got to lose and you joined SGI officially. I know that over the 19 years you were part of the movement, you ended up with quite a high rank and a lot of responsibility. So can you just talk the listeners through how that organically happened over your 19 years?
Uh, you know, when you're idealistic, and they tell you they're going to eradicate nuclear weapons in 20 years, and they tell you that you know, you're going to attain supreme enlightenment through
Hmm.
their practice, and they tell you all these things. I decided, well, I better throw myself into this, and I came to like 3 meetings a week. I would come from the Bronx to Manhattan, and I would go to all the meetings, and they asked me to become a leader, and I became first a group leader, then a young men's division district leader, then a chapter leader, and I even at one time became the acting young men's division headquarters leader. And my big entrance into the movement was in 1976. They had one of the biggest parades in the history of New York City, and I threw myself into it and all the activities. And I slept in the warehouse, building floats and marching with the various bands, and I ended up being one of the head marchers for the future division, the children in the band. And I went to they had a headquarters location for the a parade. And there I saw the head of the movement at that time, Mr. George Williams.
Ooh.
Forget his Japanese name right now, but we were there, and for the first time I read his translation of the writings of Nichiren, and I was so impressed, and I worked my butt off for them. In fact, I didn't get a dime for all of the damn time I spent with them.
Oh my goodness. Oh, and 19 years is a lot, let alone the amount you probably done for them during that entire time. So
Yes.
just going back to you mentioned that you started off in this hierarchy as a group leader. And what are the types of responsibilities that you would face as a group leader?
Well, I would have to come. One thing, I had to come every Saturday to the meetings in Manhattan at Union Square, and these meetings I had to wear white shirt, white pants, and a white beanie, and I looked so silly on the subway. I said, "Oh, it's for world peace. What the hell?" And it was pretty wild. And we march around the Union Square Park, and we play instruments. I was never in the brass band, but I played and I marched with them, and that's how I spent my Saturdays. And then during the week we had our regular meetings, and it takes a lot of your time. I went to medical school in Rome, Italy.
Wow.
And then I practiced there also for 4 years, from 79 to 84. And I was very involved in the meetings, and it did affect my studies, but that's regardless. It was once I started reading the teachings and studying the teachings, the Lotus Sutra and the writings of Nichiren, I saw how absolutely wrong they were. Okay. And how they can destroy the teachings through their personality cult.
So you mentioned going over to Italy, Rome, between 79 and 84 to study medicine. What made your decision to go from America over to Rome?
When I was applying, there were 20 applications to one position in the medical schools. It was very hard at that time. And I wasn't willing to give up my dream of becoming a doctor. And I applied to the Italian medical schools, and I went there.
And what was it like? What was the difference between America and Italy, being over there, and the food, the culture, the religion as well, because it's very heavily influenced by the church, of course.
Yes. I threw myself into the SGI activities, and in fact, it hurt me in some ways, because I didn't pass a couple of my studies there, and it took me longer than it should have. But I persevered. I got honors in anatomy, so I was proud of that.
Congratulations!
But I had a rough time with the SGI. In fact, I sort of had a breakdown there. I went to a big activity there, and I was, as they say, lit up. I mean, I was entrenched in the SGI, the cult, and I thought I was different than a regular human being, that I was transformed, and I could talk to animals, and I could live on just the light and chamomile tea and stuff like that. And it was quite an experience, but I kept with the SGI even after this crazy experience. And even as I was a resident in surgery in in Harlem Hospital in New York, when I came back, I was still quite involved in the SGI activities at that time.
Right. So you join in 76. By 79, you move over to Rome. You're obviously, I know a few of my friends who have gone to study medicine, and I know that it's taken very seriously, that you're expected to go to very intense lectures that are both physically exhausting and also mentally exhausting. And on top of that, you are trying to keep up with all of the SGI activities that you're involved in. So how big was SGI in Rome during the time that you were there? Because I've been to Rome, and it just didn't even occur to me that there could be any other type of movement or religion or practice taking place in that place.
They were quite big and becoming bigger. I used to go to meetings once a week at the general director of Italy's house, Canada, and it was convert all the time.
Right.
No matter who you were with, conversion, and the training sessions that we went to in Italy and in France, they were nonstop, 2 hours or no hours of sleep. I think sleep deprivation is a big part of their training for the youth, so
Right.
that they can you become very suggestive with the sleep deprivation, and they really thought control. They really push you to your limits, but not in a good way. It's not as if we're fighting in Normandy against the Nazis or anything, but they make it very militaristic.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to follow whatever they tell you. Your leaders, they say follow no matter what. That's a big thing in the cult.
So they have traction, and they're picking up and recruiting in Rome. So I'm assuming at this point it's also across the world, because Italy is in Europe and quite a long way away from America, and obviously from the more Asian roots of the original Buddhist practices. So it sounds to me as if it's kind of worldwide at this point in 1979 when you go over to Rome.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
okay.
correct. There's a concept. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you go.
There's a concept in Nichiren Buddhism, Zui Hobini, which means that the teachings have to adapt to the cultures of the country, but they don't. It's pure Japanese culture.
Right.
It's
right.
Based on Zen Bushido, the teachings of the warrior, and Shingon teachings of called Yuiga Yoga, which is the guru is always right. And that's basically what the Soka Gakkai is. It's the teaching of the great guru, Daisaku Ikeda. They don't call him a guru, of course. They call him a mentor.
Right, right. Yep. And they obviously, I'm assuming, don't call him a cult leader either.
Oh, yeah. If you persist in that more than once, if you say it, you're out. You're excommunicated. So.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So it's 1979. You study for 5 years in Rome, and then you talked about in the middle of a residency back over in America, you were still trying to do your best with this residency and also still stay committed to SGI. So is this in 84, 85 when you returned to America?
Yes, and then I did 2 more years in Ross University School of Medicine, where I completed basically my clinical training, and 6 months of that was in the Caribbean, and I took, of course, my Gohanzon, and I had my box, which I carried. I don't know how I carried that in my luggage, but I set up in Dominica, Portsmouth, Dominica, and I finished my 6 months, and then I went to do my clinicals in Detroit, where I practiced there with the Gakkai, and I practiced back in New York, and I completed my medical degree and got into a surgical residency in Harlem Hospital.
So, was there an SGI presence over in the Caribbean?
No, I was it.
Okay, so you took. Did you ever the good word, the good message whilst you were there?
Oh, I told a lot of people about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, but it's actually Namum Myoho Renge Kyo. But I did spread as much as I could.
Right. All right. So even when you were away from group sessions and sort of a buzz or hive of SGI activity, you stayed true to the teachings of SGI.
Yes. One of my biggest regrets is converting people into the Soka Gakkai. I must have converted 15 or 20 people to get their Gohanzans, and I also taught Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to hundreds of people. And that's one of my biggest regrets, because anyone who joined the Soka Gakkai was joining a personality cult and not the true teachings.
Right, right. So when you spoke about taking on too much and finding yourself struggling with all of the responsibility, is that something you would describe as almost spiritual burnout?
Yeah, I would say that, but I still, when I started to study, I believed even more in the teachings, and but I knew that the teachings were not Nichiren's teachings; they were Daisaku Ikeda's teachings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They appropriated the mantra Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They appropriated it to enrich the top Japanese leaders, who are all getting making six-figure salaries, mid six-figure salaries, to do the same work that Nichiren and Sakyamuni Buddha did for nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and that I do for nothing, and that any true disciple desires little and just cares about the teachings, but they don't care about the teachings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's a very sad thing.
And I mean, in comparison to your practice of Nichiren, what are the differences in numbers between your practice and SGI?
Well, outside of SGI, there's approximately 15 million people or more who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, and most of them chant Namu and not Nam, and it seems like a small difference, but it's really quite profound. There's many people who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo thanks to Nichiren Daishonin, because his life was so incredible that many people have decided to try the practice and actually throw themselves into the practice.
Right. Okay. This is all really interesting. I feel like I'm getting a deep perspective of things that I wasn't sure of before. So once you start your residency in Harlem, is there a specific type of is it a residency for something specific, like pediatrics or anything like that?
It was surgery, but I then went into emergency medicine, and I did that for a couple years, and then I became a family practitioner.
Right.
And
Okay.
I've been one since then. And
what was the most interesting thing that happened to you during your training in terms of medicine?
I was at Harlem Hospital in the throes of a crack epidemic, and there was so much trauma that I saw. People jumping out of windows, gunshot wounds, stab wounds, things like that. That was the most interesting, how people survive the most terrible of injuries, that human life is so incredible that people are shot in the head and they still survive. People jumping out of buildings and they walk away from it. It's really an incredible thing, life and karma, you know.
Wow. And this is obviously your study, your residency, or after your residency, you've gone into emergency medicine, so you're seeing a lot of these people.
Well, I was not in a I was in a trauma 3 emergency room, so I didn't see the worst. That was in my training, you asked, and that's where I saw the most incredible things.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. I couldn't even imagine, especially at the moment where people are obviously the scariest thing at the moment is catching the COVID virus, which is causing the current pandemic. So I couldn't imagine, and firearms we don't have over here really. Most, unless you have an illegal firearm and you're involved in drug trafficking and things, or you're a farmer and then you can have a license for some kind of rifle, which is strange, but we don't have firearms over here. So when I hear about people just shooting each other, it's always really strange for me to imagine. And you're just seeing patients with bullet wounds in their heads. That's such a crazy picture for me to imagine.
One fellow, he was a big man, about 6 feet, 350 pounds, solid muscle, and he came into the emergency room in a without consciousness, and I examined him, and he woke up. I said, "What happened? What happened?" He goes, "Oh, I was carrying $5,000 to someone else, and this guy said, 'Give it up.' And I jumped into the cab, and that's the last thing I remember." And he was shot in the head. And I feel around, yeah, there's a bullet wound in his head, and we take him to the X-ray room, and the bullet was flattened like a pancake around his skull. He was such a big guy, he had like bulletproof skull, and that was a pretty amazing incident that we had. And
what? That's amazing.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, were you able to actually see the bullet or have the
Yeah, I took it out. It was flattened like a pancake against his skull. We sutured him up, and he spent like one night in the hospital, and he was gone.
That is crazy. That's crazy. I have never heard of anything like that in my life. Maybe in a superhero movie when somebody has like titanium skeleton or something like that. That's mad. My goodness.
The main reason in 1995 that I left the Soka Gakkai, because my wife was dying. She was a terrible alcoholic. She had asthma and diabetes and cirrhosis and all of those things. And no matter what I did with the Soka Gakkai, she was getting worse. And they would talk behind our backs. "Oh, Nancy's a drunk," and blah, blah, blah. And then I went to a Nichiren Shu priest, and he had no idea what to do either. And I decided to practice as Nichiren Daishonin taught. And my wife is my rock now. She's just so healthy and wonderful. I mean, she still has some problems, but the house is immaculate, and she's just such a wonderful person.
Aww.
And we chant together, and we try to study the true teachings, the Lotus Sutra and Nichiren's teachings. And I'm just so happy to have met Nichiren Daishonin and Shakyamuni Buddha, you know, and getting away from Daisaku Ikeda and the cult.
Oh, a big shout out to Nancy. What an amazing journey. What she sounds like an incredible woman.
She really is. She really is.
Is she around, or is she giving you some space so we can chat?
I think she's taking a nap right now. So
Okay. Well, you'll have to tell her that I said hello.
I will. Casey says hello, Nancy.
So you've become a group leader. You've gone off to Rome. You've had this amazing journey. You've gone to the Caribbean. You've seen probably more of the world than most people your age especially in that time period have seen. And I mean, at what stage were you in charge of the men's division? Was this before you left or when you came back?
When I came back, I was a men's division district leader. I held district uh, um, discussion meetings in my house. And I did that from off and on because, a resident is very busy. I did that off and on from about 86 till 94, right around then, 95.
Okay. And at this point, how much of your time are you having to put aside for SGI related activities?
In most of my free time, I did SGI activities.
Right, okay.
Maybe I would go to instead of 3, 4, 5 meetings a week, I'd go to about 1 meeting a week, something to that effect. Yes.
Okay. And this was 94, 95, and you mentioned actually finally leaving the movement in 95. So I know you've mentioned Nancy and everybody talking behind your backs and looking for a different approach to helping you and Nancy with your problems. So what was the actual turning point where you said, I do not want to be a part of SGI anymore and I'm walking away at this moment right now?
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes.
As I said, I'm going to give it one more chance. I had been reading on the internet about the Soka Gakkai cult, and I was shocked. Actually, a chapter leader showed me to them, hoping that I would debate them. But I couldn't debate them because everything they said was absolutely true on the internet. And but I was still in SGI after spending 19 years with them. I said, let me give it one more chance. And I went to a New York regional meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finished the meeting and I didn't hear Shakyamuni Buddha's name once, I didn't hear Nichiren Daishonin's name once, I heard maybe Nam Myoho Renge Kyo 2 or 3 times, and I heard the Gohanzon, which is the object of devotion, mentioned maybe once, maybe not at all, and Daisaku Ikeda was mentioned over 100 times. I said, that's it for me. This is not Nichiren's Lotus Sutra Buddhism. And I never went to another meeting after that.
And what happened when you moved away from SGI and looked for a different group, a Nichiren group to join? Did you have to explain to yourself, to others, why you'd moved away from them and why you were looking for something different?
Yes, I was looking for a group that practiced as Nichiren Daishonin taught. And I thought it was the Kempan Hokke, but after being with them for about 4 or 5 years, I saw that they cared more about money than the teachings. Mm-hmm. And it seems like all the groups, the Nichiren Shu, the Honman Butsuryo Shu, and all of the sects, the Nichiren Shoshu, they care more about the money than the teachings, and they'll do almost anything in order to gain more converts. So I became an independent who tries to practice as best as I can as Nichiren Daishonin taught, and as the Lotus Sutra teaches, which is a beautiful literature, a beautiful preaching of the Buddha. And I'm just happy to be where I am now.
It looks that way. You have a very genuine, peaceful look on your face right now as you speak about it. So I believe you when you speak about it. I feel like you're being completely genuine, which is amazing. It's obviously been very beneficial for you and your wife and your family overall.
I'm so fortunate to be here and speak to you and tell you my feelings about the Soka Gakkai cult and this Buddhism. So.
It's interesting because when I posted on my original interview that I did with James, and I spoke to him about his experience with SGI, and he spoke a lot about spiritual burnout and alienating friends and family that weren't a part of SGI. Um, I posted a link to the episode in a couple of SGI subreddits that are purposefully for whistleblowing and cult recovery. And I've had 2 or 3 people reach out to me and ask me what my thoughts are and if I believed what James was telling me. And I could tell straight away that I was being almost I think they were attempting to recruit me. Which is funny. What of all the places to go to, you go into an SGI whistleblowing subreddit and trying to disregard what somebody has told me and then say, just ignore everything they've said and tell me what your thoughts are, and actually this is why he's wrong, this is what the truth is, and maybe you'd be interested in reading some more. Here's some articles.
That's their modus operandi, that they will try to recruit everybody into SGI, but you're being recruited into a cult. It's not much different than Scientology. You mentioned about alienating people or not being with the friends and the family members who are not SGI. If they slander the SGI, if they say Daisaku Ikeda is a cult leader or something, I would get very upset. I would tell them, no, you're absolutely wrong. Even when my parents would say, you're in a cult, can't you get out of this cult? I would say no, and I eventually converted my mother, but she quit the cult too. Gosh. Thank goodness. And it's very subtle. They give you the teachings that if anyone says something's wrong with the SGI, you have to set them straight. You have to tell them that the SGI is the only hope for humanity, and Daisaku Ikeda is the leader that you all should have. And when you talk to people and promote the SGI, and they want nothing to do with it, you create a block between you and them. And I ruined a lot of my friendships and even my family relationships because of this very, very sad way of relating to people. When you saw a person, it wasn't as a friend, it was as, oh, this person is someone to convert to the SGI. And, that's not a way to live. You have to give and take with relationships. And although my patients who are very ill and there's no hope for them, I do teach them Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, but I don't teach them the Rogo cult. I teach them the Lotus Sutra, and go to Nichiren and the Lotus Sutra, and they're the ones to follow, not any person. In fact, there's a teaching in real Buddhism, follow the law and not persons. But SGI is all follow the person. And it's really, they sing songs, Forever Sensei. And we sang songs after almost every meeting, for Sensei, for Sensei. What about the law and Nichiren Daishonin? So it's I've determined to set them straight, to take as many people out of the Soka Gakkai as possible. And anyone thinking of joining, I tell them, follow Nichiren Daishonin and the Lotus Sutra. You don't need anything else. You don't need a cult leader to become Shinichi Yamamoto. We want the youth division to become like Shinichi Yamamoto, who is Daisaku Ikeda in his novel The Human Revolution.
So
it's like Dianetics and Scientology.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing, isn't it? I
Yes.
mean, a lot of the things we speak about, I edit these episodes in the house, and my partner manages to catch a lot of the content that I explore in my interviews, and he said all your episodes are they're starting to sound the same. And I was like, well, they will, because I always go back to Stephen Hassan's bite model, and every single point that you can apply from your experience in a sect or a cult or a movement into the bite model shows the level of control that a group has over its members.
Yes.
So 9 times out of 10, when I'm speaking to an ex-member of a movement like this one, for example, they're going to be able to apply the same experiences of us versus them, which you've just explained with your friends and
Yes.
family, good versus evil, which is, SGI against everybody else. Then they are the true ones, and they have the true knowledge, and anybody else and all the other teachings are wrong. You've spoken about sleep deprivation, and not being able to have any time for yourself outside of your training and the SGI, so you're not getting any cognitive dissonance there, and all of these things, not just the bite model, but any model that any professional has put together around recognizing a cult and its system of control. So
a lot of it has to do with fear.
Yes.
That if you go against Soka Gakkai, you're going to fall into the hell of incessant suffering. And it's pretty ironic, because according to Nichiren Daishonen's Buddhism, they're the ones who are going to fall into hell by destroying the beautiful teachings. And it really, it's a sad thing. It really is, and it hurts me a lot.
What would be your outlook or your advice if somebody was to come to you and say, I no longer want to be a part of SGI, but I'm thinking of converting to something like paganism? Would you still recommend that person take their journey out of SGI and elsewhere, or would you direct them only to Nichiren?
Well, truthfully, when someone is interested in Buddhism, for example, and they don't want to practice any one Buddhism, I tell them, okay, here's a good way to determine which is the true teachings, or which is the true practice. Try Zen for 90 days. Mm-hmm. Try chanting Namu Amida Butsu for 90 days. And then try chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo for 90 days. And then you can make an informed opinion about which is the best practice for you. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm partial, and I believe that once they chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, they're going to stick with it. But that's one way to approach the matter. It all depends on the person's capacity and their the time and things like that, and your experience with teaching people the Buddhism.
What you've just said there is exactly what I was expecting you to say, because obviously people inside of cults, somebody could argue listening to this that you've just gone from one cult to another and you're trying to only preach the word of Nichiren, which is also a cult. But the fact that you've said that people should try different types of Buddhism and see what works for them, step away from SGI and try different things and see what fits and see what works, is a sign to me that that's not the path that your beliefs have gone down.
Of course, it's like a Catholic who tries to convert you, which they try to do for Jewish people, for example, or Christians or evangelicals. Of course, they're partial to their own teachings. And but Nichiren teaches that depending on the capacity of the person, you can teach them the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold teachings, the 12-link chain of causation, and non-substantiality, and all the other Buddhist teachings, and then they can arrive, hopefully, at the Lotus Sutra. So it's not 100% where you just teach them Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. If they're opposed to it, you try to. There's different ways of approaching conversion, and but SGI is only one way. You're either SGI or you're in hell.
Right. Okay.
That's not the teachings of Nichiren.
So during your time within SGI, you spoke about having to gain your qualifications and try to balance that with SGI at the same time. Did you have any friends or hobbies or activities outside either of those two things?
Yes, I played pool with a pool league in the Bronx, and we won the pool league championship. So I was pretty happy about that. Yay!
Congratulations!
And yeah, that was my hobby then. My hobby now, which I don't do with the COVID, but I used to go to the casino and play poker, and I was fairly accomplished at that. I think I was a winner versus a loser, but that's my hobby now. But now I'm not doing that. Now I do my work, and I'm pretty proud of myself because I've been on dialysis for 5 years, and out of the 157 people in my dialysis center, I myself or maybe one other person is working, and I attribute it, of course, to my practice being strong of mind, and meditation is good because it does focus and clarify the mind. And I'm hoping to get a kidney this year, and I'm really psyched about that, So
that's what an inspirational story. That's incredible. I mean, a massive kudos for you for continuing to power on with everything and stay busy and keep. Obviously your whole life you sound like you've just been busy, so sitting still does not sound like something you would be able to do even if you were told to. So that's amazing. I really hope that you managed to get this kidney. I mean, what would that mean for you if you were to get that phone call?
Well, traveling now is a pain in the butt because I have to give them a month notice and find a dialysis center where I'm going, and I still have to do it 3 days a week for 4 hours a day, and it's just a pain in the neck to travel, and I sort of miss traveling, but nobody's traveling now anyway, so it's not the worst thing in the world. So.
If they were to phone you today and tell you that they have a kidney for you, how would that change?
I'm going to Tulsa. Goodbye, Casey.
That would be amazing. So just to go back to some of the restrictions you were speaking about, you spoke about how sleep deprivation played a big part in some of your time in SGI. Can you remember any other types of restrictions that don't apply to typical everyday life or Nichiren in particular, in terms of like food, clothing, sexuality, any of those things?
Yes, I would never go to a funeral that was not a Buddhist funeral, a Nam Myoho Renge Kyo SGI funeral, and a Christian wedding. I would go to the reception, but I would not go to the religious ceremonies. Anything not SGI was verboten. So that's one thing that I experienced.
That is not something I knew happened in SGI, so that's really surprised me.
Not all SGI feel that way, but if you talk to the leaders, you'll see that there's that they say, well, just chant to yourself during the ceremony or something like that,
Right. So what are they worried about? Are they worried about the scripture that is being spoken reaching you in some way spiritually? What would be their reasoning behind um, discouraging people to attend weddings and funerals?
Well, I think that was my take and opinion on it. Um, but, when they're always telling you how evil this is, how evil that is, you get the idea that maybe I'll stay away from evil. You know what I mean? And
Right, okay, okay. And what about, was there a particular diet that you were encouraged to go by?
no, not really. No, no encouragement of diet.
Okay.
Um, they're very left-leaning, the Soka Gakkai in America. Um, I think they're pro-abortion in general, even though Sakamuni Buddha was against abortion. Why
Okay.
should you have an abortion when there's birth control? So that's his feeling, and that's basically my feeling. If you don't want to have a baby, then do birth control. Then you won't have to worry about doing an abortion,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. They talk about the dignity of human life in the SGI, but yet one of the top female leaders was um, uh, a, death sentence prosecutor.
Wow, that's a bit strange, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
that's
because
that's
she had a
very
lot of
strange.
power, and she was helping in them destroy. They tried to destroy the Nichiren Shoshu, and she was instrumental in trying to get them outlawed in the United States. Linda Johnson was her name. And I was always, since I quit the SGI, I was always ribbing them, not ribbing them, but telling them, how can you talk about the dignity of life, but you have a death sentence prosecutor as one of your top leaders? So they'll take anybody who helps them. In fact, um, in Japan, the many of their top leaders, the general directors and the vice presidents, are psychologists or accountants.
So much like I did some Patreon coverage on Aum Shinrikyo, and the movement tended to lean towards professionals in science, and particularly chemistry, surgeons, doctors, lawyers, politicians, anybody that might be able to further their the intentions of the cult overall. So people of influence and power, really. Sounds
Oh,
quite similar.
in Japan, of course, you know about the New Komeito, which is SGI's political party, and they wield quite a bit of power. And in fact, I hear, now this is hearsay, but if SGI member goes before a court, they try to get him to a court where the judge is SGI or um, affiliated with the LDP party, so that they get a good favorable um, hearing, you know.
So
So
just to go back to something you spoke about before with contraception and that topic, it's difficult, isn't it? It's always one that is heavily debated, pro-abortion or anti-abortion, of course, because if a woman is sexually assaulted or attacked and becomes pregnant because of a result of that, then it's difficult there with ethics and morals to say whether pro-abortion or anti-abortion applies in that situation. So that's always a really difficult one.
I would say from a doctor's standpoint, that there are hormonal therapies that within a day of something like that, you can give the person and she will not fertilize the egg,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that would be okay. But anything after that, because I follow the teachings of the Buddha,
Hmm.
he feels that abortion is not correct. Of course, he didn't have the way of stopping fertilization that we do now.
Yeah.
But any time later, like they're talking about in some of the states, when you can hear the heartbeat of the child, that abortion is that's too late to do an abortion, and I'm more in agreement with that.
Mm-hmm. And are you vegetarian as well?
No, I'm not a vegetarian. I need to eat a lot of protein. So I try to follow my doctor's orders and eat chicken, fish, and pork steaks and beef steaks and stuff like that.
Okay. And when you finally decided to leave SGI in 1995, did you have a conversation at all with David Buck?
Yes.
And how was that?
He was like a deer in a headlight when I started talking about the true teachings. And at that time, I was Kempon Hoke, which, although is not great, is closer to the truth than the Soka Gakkai for sure. And he was like a deer in the headlights. He didn't know what to say. He was like, huh?
And you've talked about moving around from one movement to another before settling where you are now. And
Yes.
What has your life been like since? How has it changed in terms of your level of responsibility, your spiritual burnout? How have all of those things changed?
Besides being happier?
Of course, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I still teach some of my friends. In fact, my best friend is Redneck Ed. He's like an old-time cowboy in Oklahoma, and he chants with me. So, I find that pretty remarkable. He's taught me how to rope and to shoe horses and stuff like that. So I still teach people, especially when they're in trouble, the Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. And,
So the people that you are interacting with, you're almost skill sharing.
Yes.
That sounds so wholesome. I want to learn how to do those things, even though I can never imagine a time I'd need to use putting shoes on a horse as an actual skill. It's still something I'd love to learn how to do. That's amazing.
Well, when you come to Oklahoma, we'll take you to Ed's petting zoo. He's got a mule called Jesus. He's got 2 horses. He's got 7 dogs. He's got 2 pigs, and they're pets. All of them are
That
pets.
sounds like so much fun. And Oklahoma is, I'm guessing, very heavily Christian based. So it's interesting that he has found Nichiren in amongst a very Orthodox Christian environment.
Yes, it's part of the Bible Belt, and I sometimes debate with preachers or born again evangelicals, and teach them about cause and effect. That it's not the deliverance of God. It's your thoughts, your words, and your deeds that will determine the outcome of your life.
Mm-hmm,
And it's SGI has a center in Oklahoma City, I believe, possibly in Tulsa. But of course, I have nothing to do with them. If they want to come to my house, they're more than welcome. But they treat me like I'm a vampire or something.
So, with Nichiren, because I've been speaking to so many ex Jehovah's Witnesses lately, that this is something I've discussed at length, and also recently with. I'm not sure if you've heard of the QAnon conspiracy and everything that's going on with Q in America, which is just seems to be taking over the world. But we were talking about how a lot of different religions or denominations of Christianity or denominations of Christianity all seem to have doomsday prophecies or end times prophecies on Obviously, you've mentioned SGI have said that you will burn in hellfire. Is that something that Nichiren has, or is that fear not instilled in you as a practicing member?
Well, Nichiren teaches that we have 10 worlds or 10 emotional characteristic traits. Every person has that. When you have stomach cancer, you're in hell. When you have a toothache, you're a bad toothache or a migraine, you're in hell. When you're greedy for something, you're in hunger, the world of hunger. When you act like an animal, somebody hits you in the arm accidentally, you punch him in the face. Be like an animal who turns on you, or anger, humanity, tranquility, rapture, uh, learning, self-absorption, which is the state of like Mozart or a brain surgeon, Bodhisattva, which is the world of compassion, and the world of Buddha, that everyone has these 10 states. So hell is in the heart of someone who despises their mother or hurts their father, you
Okay.
know. So something like that. It's
So if you decide to step away from Nichiren, you're not going to burn in hellfire for that.
Well, there is reincarnation, and I think not as propitious situation will occur to you after you die.
Okay.
You won't be born in happy circumstances, but hell, as far as somewhere in the distance, no. But we do believe in reincarnation and rebirth.
Okay. Okay. Which obviously is intrinsic with Buddhist teaching overall.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Even the earliest Buddhist teachings, the Theravada teachings, that people who don't become arhats don't reach nirvana in the Theravadan teachings. They will be born in the six lower worlds, which includes heaven and rapture. Hell, hunger, animality, anger, tranquility, but they won't be born into the higher realms.
Okay. Okay. So you joined in 1976 and the movement started in 1933. So it's approximately 40 years in between the start of the movement and you joining. And it seems as though in those 40 years, SGI has managed to work out a very clever way of recruiting, indoctrinating, and retaining the members of SGI in such a short period of time. Um, what other techniques do you think are used on top of the ones we've talked about, like sleep deprivation and love bombing, for this movement to be so successful and have the amount of members that it does worldwide?
Choosing the right people, choosing people who are depressed or suffering or unfulfilled in one way or another. They will grasp upon anything to elevate their life condition.
And
I think that's one of the main things.
you talked about actually managing to recruit 15 to 20 people yourself into SGI. Did you know upon speaking to those people that they were going through those types of experiences and were more likely to accept SGI's message because of those things that they were going through?
Every single one
Do you have
was
some examples of the type of place that they were spiritually or mentally that might make them more susceptible to indoctrination?
uh, most of them depression and lack of realization of their dreams and goals. And unlike real Buddhism, they would say, "Oh, chant for a car, chant for a house, chant for this, chant for that." When real Buddhism is that attachments are no good, because there's nothing we can really be attached to anyway. We can't take it with us. You know what I mean? But sometimes a person who's very spiritual, they will say, "Oh, just why don't you chant for some material goal? You know, so you can have more money for SGI."
Oh my goodness, right. Okay. So once you'd recruited these people and you left the movement, did you ever attempt to have a conversation where you brought them back out?
Yes, my friend David Buck in particular. Uh, I met some people on the street, and they were so silly. "Oh, Dr. Rogo, are you okay? You look so terrible." And I was really happy. And I said,
That's almost like gaslighting, isn't it? That's like
yes,
telling
yes,
you one thing when another thing is true.
yes. They try to tell you what you're thinking or what you feel. And, none of them are real psychiatrists, and they're giving guidance for some life-changing events in your life, like children, and they have no experience, but they're training you because of ego and anger,
Hmm.
and not out of real concern or real knowledge on how to help a person, because they have no training whatsoever.
And when you brought these people into SGI originally, were you rewarded with praise, or how did it feel to further the message of SGI when you were so invested in it at that time?
Oh, yes, you were praised so much. I was never praised more than when I met Daisaku Ikeda in Japan. Oh, I
Wow,
was I
okay.
was a rock star. you know, I we were at a book fair, and not, I mean a book center, and they had the Butsudans, which is the housing for the object of devotion. They had beads and all sorts of things like that. And he walks in when I was with three of my friends. We were going on a Tozan, which is a pilgrimage to Japan, and he showed up. And when I told people, he showed up and he gave me a whole present of beads. Like I was the star for about a month. They had me speak in so many meetings how I had met Daisaku Ikeda. Oh my God. It was incredible, because he is the center of everything. When they chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, in their heart they're chanting Nam Daisaku Ikeda, devotion to Daisaku
Mhm,
Ikeda.
mhm, mhm. And what year was this? Do you remember? And how old was he when you met him?
It was in 1978.
Right, okay. And is he still alive today?
I doubt it. I mean,
I'm gonna quickly look it up.
he hasn't really been seen since 2010. Uh, that's my.
Sometimes with these situations, though, when the leader passes away, they
They've been
don't
known
tell
to
people
photo.
straight away, and they have other
uh,
people pulling the strings, making it look as though, that person is still giving the gospel truth. And um
They're
so
a
it
doc.
says here that he's still alive. He's 92 years old. Um
I think he's more likely, if he's alive in a vegetative state, that he had a stroke, head broken into seven pieces. Excuse me. But anyway, that's my opinion. And they've been documented. They even lost a court case where they photoshopped the high priest of Nichiren Shoshu, who they hate with a passion. And they have photoshopped him with geishas. So
Did you,
uh,
when you said he had a stroke, were you, because he really does look like in this picture here, he really does look like he has had one. Is that something that actually happened to him?
my belief is yes, as a doctor, but I they keep everything more secret than
So
Donald Trump's illness.
did he look like this when you met him,
No, he
with
was
the
not.
sort of
He did
upturned
not
lip
have
and
he did not have facial drooping when I met him.
Yeah, that's what it is. That is definitely what it is in these pictures. He has facial drooping that looks definitely like he's had a stroke or plastic surgery. Yeah, definitely, especially in this picture.
Yes, yes. One side of his face is different than the other side for
Hmm.
sure.
So you meet him, you become a rock star within the SGI. What what
For
what is the conversation like between you and Daisuke Akida? Is it how do you feel at that time?
Well, I didn't know what to offer him, so I offered him a cigarette, and he took it and he lit it up, and then he told me, he said, "I think I have very good uh, uh, beads for you that you will uh, you will enjoy them very much." And he gave me like a $5 set of beads for the thousands of dollars I donated and thousands of dollars I oh, and all the people I converted and all of the work that I did in the Soka Gakkai Community Center. It was sort of like what is the Scientology ship that they put all the people on? At our centers, it's like that, where for you're up all night protecting the Gohonzon. Like the place is locked up like it can be. How could you protect the Gohonzon? Why would you need or protect the mentor? As I was a bodyguard for the mentor called the Sokahan once or more than once when he came to America, and you have to make sure that nobody approaches him if he doesn't want to be approached, or nobody or
Right.
nobody goes after him. And like you have to protect the mentor, even though he's got these Japanese bodyguards and stuff who are always watching him and stuff.
So that's cult of personality. That sort of um venerable approach to somebody in terms of don't let them touch him or see him or speak to him if he doesn't want to be spoken to or touched or approached. And
Sometimes he'll be very approachable. He'll approach many members, but if he's moving here or there, he doesn't want anybody, to talk to him at times. Uh, but
and being told to protect an object in a community center once it's locked throughout the entire night just seems to me like another way to stop you from having a good night's sleep and not thinking about SGI. It's another way of just saying you need to protect this tonight.
yes,
Put all
yes.
your thoughts and energy and focus into protecting this thing because it's very important. So would you
One
agree
thing
with
I
that?
Yes, one thing I found amazing is that at least in before I left, in every community center in America, they had a special apartment for Ikeda, even though he never visits. And it was the most plush carpeting, the finest beds, the gold filled fixtures. It was incredible. Just in case, in the one in a million chance he came, he had the best place to
Wow.
stay in the whole
And
world.
did you get to visit this place?
Yes, I cleaned it. I cleaned his toilets many times.
Even though he never came to stay.
Yes, yes, yes. But
So,
that was good because I didn't have to clean any dirty toilets.
do you think it's reasonable to assume that he has these buildings all over the world then in case he decides to travel?
He hasn't traveled in 10 years for sure. So he's not traveling anywhere. No, it's not reasonable. And the real reason is the real estate holdings. That's basically that and their businesses. Do you know that 7-Eleven is the largest shareholder is Soka Gakkai? Uh,
No.
yes, yes.
That's like, I mentioned this in another episode. That's like the Unification Church being the number one supplier of sushi
Mm.
across America.
Uh,
What is going on with all of these huge movements having such influence in mainstream society and typical people wandering down the street buying newspapers don't realize that those newspapers are owned by
yes.
cults and cult leaders. So that's blown my mind. That
The
has.
Washington Times newspaper is
Yeah.
owned by the Unification Church, and that's a mainstream newspaper. Little do they know.
That is, isn't it? It's just the more I find out about these things, the more gobsmacked I am, and I don't know why, because it keeps happening. So I should just expect it by this point, I think. So
Soka Gakkai has prime real estate. For example, in New York, they have a heritage building that's they bought for pittance because Greg Walpert, who's one of their on their board of directors, he's a big time real estate broker. He got it for them for like $9 million. Now it's worth
oh,
about 25 or $30 million at least in on 15th Street. It's quite an incredible building.
that's
And they
dodgy,
have
isn't it? That's
they have
that's not fair. That's a bit underhanded, isn't it?
mansions in Malibu, their university. I mean, they have hundreds of millions of dollars of property. That's where most of their money comes from. Their cemetery business. They're in cahoots with Mitsubishi in heavy industrials, Mitsubishi, and they have the um, cemetery business with Mitsubishi, who makes landmines and weapons of mass destruction. So much for their world peace. They're the hypocritical, most phony organization in the whole world.
That is also something that I had no idea about. So there's a lot of business ventures and capital that is involved in SGI. I just wanted to go back to a point I made before about if if the leader has this very, very cozy place in New York that you have cleaned, is it likely that he has them elsewhere? Sorry,
All
I think I got confused. Not that it's likely that he'll travel, but likely that he has these very expensive, very comfortable places that he could travel to and visit if he so wished.
Of course, yes. In fact, some of his places in California, he's got a mansion in Malibu, where even though he hasn't come in about 15 years to the United States, they still have people watching the place and cleaning it and making sure it's just perfect for the dear leader.
That is very strange, isn't it? He's 92 as well, so I mean I can't imagine him visiting anywhere anytime soon,
Well,
but especially during a pandemic.
especially since he's probably dead.
I mean, do we know the last time he was publicly seen?
2010.
That was the last time he was publicly seen.
Publicly seen, although they lie all the time. Oh, we saw a Kata, blah, blah, blah.
What? That was a decade ago.
Yes, yes.
That is.
They're keeping his name alive until they can figure out what to do with the $300 billion, $500 billion that Soka Gakkai has. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. They still haven't figured out where all the money's going, but it looks like his son, Hiramatsu Ikeda, is going to be the next leader because he's becoming more seen, and he has a degree in social work.
Right. Right. Okay. So not in sort of like almost like world leadership skills you need for this type of thing. I can't believe that he hasn't been seen for that long. That is such a long period of time.
Like North Korea. I mean,
Yeah. Now that you've said that, actually, I can draw those parallels. That is, very interesting. I wonder if I really wonder if he is alive or not now. I'm definitely going to end up going down a rabbit hole after we finish our conversation today, reading up things and trying to find recent pictures of him and whatnot. Very interesting. So I've got a few things here to go back to that we've touched upon that I wanted to go into more detail. And one of them was around when you were a group leader and you got on the train and you're dressed all in white.
Yes.
Is this something that's expected of a group leader or expected of all SGI members? It comes across as very pure evangelical. I don't know. But what?
And then sometimes you tell people on the subway, Namyo Renge Kyo, and they look at you like you're nuts. And I felt more than once embarrassed dressing like that to taking the subway into Union Square. It was but it was for the sake of world peace.
It was for world peace. So was it expected of all of you, or just group leaders, or
No,
was it too?
no, all of the young men's division during some of those years. We were all required Saturday mornings to wear that white shirt and pants and beanies.
Okay, and what about the young women's division? How were they expected to dress?
Well, they have their group meetings. The young women's division, the Kotekitai, and other group that plays the what do you call those?
Flutes.
Flutes. And
Flutes also come across very evangelical and pure as well, don't they?
Yes. And then they wear a light purple outfit when they're at their meetings and at the different meetings, and they run around either collecting donations or having putting you in your seat and stuff like that.
And what about members of the LGBT community? How were they accepted or perceived within SGI during your? Because I've spoken to James and he was a member recently within the last decade. So I'm interested in your perspective when equal rights were not the way they are today in the Western world, in modern society.
Yeah, they were into conversion therapy. They would. I know this person. I'm not going to name his name, but he was a homosexual fellow, and he was more or less not forced, but pressured into getting married. And of course, his marriage didn't last. But then they changed because they were hemorrhaging so many members that they would do anything to get anybody from any group. So they would really push for LGBT rights and things like that, and they would march in the LGBT parades and stuff like that. But
Right.
That changed when I was there. It was you were gently pressured into marriage and stuff,
Right.
heterosexual marriage and stuff like that.
Okay, so during the time that you were in SGI, if I'm a woman who identifies as a man, I wouldn't be able to go around with the men's division doing things that the men do in their sort of SGI responsibilities.
Not that I know of, but of course then people were not coming out like they are now. So.
Yeah. I definitely thought it must have been different in the 70s and 80s. I know in terms of conversion therapy, during Pride Month, for anyone that's interested, I did an episode on the history of conversion therapy because that has very strong links to cult-like methods of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just read a post today about how Canada is actually making it illegal for anyone to take a minor outside of Canada to engage in this harmful practice. And conversion therapy has also been banned throughout the whole of Canada for anyone under the age of 18. So that's a huge milestone, and I think that should be celebrated.
Yes.
And what would be your advice to people who are looking to leave SGI but aren't sure what the best steps are to take?
They will keep you on their roles, their membership roles, forever if you don't send a letter of resignation. With few exceptions. I'm one of the exceptions. They want absolutely nothing to do with me. And I have heard that they don't want people reading my blog or contacting me. So, but, they need to sign a letter of resignation and send it to their leaders and to the main headquarters in Santa Monica, California.
Okay. And if there is a fear that comes with leaving the movement, what would you say to people who might be listening now about what they can do, or what is normal to think or feel at the moment you decide to leave, and what not to be scared of?
Well, it depends if they want to continue to practice the Lotus Sutra Buddhism of Nichiren. Then I recommend that they get a Nichiren Gohonzon instead of the one bestowed by SGI. That's the first thing, because once you have a different Gohonzon, a different object of devotion, you're no longer allowed in SGI. You're kicked out. No more meetings in your house. Nothing once you have a Nichiren Gohonzon, a copy of a Nichiren Gohonzon.
Right. Okay.
Right now they have a copy of a high priest of Nichiren Shoshu, which is very ironic because they hate the Nichiren Shoshu. In fact, they have a group that's just devoted to slandering and retributing and rebuking Nichiren Shoshu, the Soka spirit. And they're very radical, I would say.
And do you think sometimes it's easier to like actions speak louder than words? Perhaps it's easier to take a Gohonzon?
Yes.
Perhaps it's easier to take one of those and use it than it is to sit down and have a difficult conversation with somebody about wanting to leave the movement and have them try and keep you there when you want to leave.
Oh, that goes without saying. I know this person, pretty ironic. She got two Nichiren Shu Gohonzons, and when a top leader went to her house, she said, "You've got to get rid of those Gohonzons. They're heretical objects." And she refused. And ironically, this top leader, territory chief, I mean, you're not going to maybe agree with what I say, but 2 weeks later, she dropped dead. So, they're always criticizing people for when they leave. Oh, look at the problems that they have. Look at this one and that one. They drop dead. But of course, they keep it hush hush when any of their members die.
Yes.
Dying is just one of the four sufferings: birth, old age, illness, and death, according to Buddhism. It's as natural as a tree blooming. So, they're very mean when it comes to people's deaths.
And hypocritical, it sounds, as well.
Yes.
So, when you talk about your Gohonzon, do you have it with you? What does it look like exactly? Because I'm not sure, and I'm really interested, and I'd love to know.
Well, you can look it up. I can't move it here right now. Oh, I have one that I can show you.
Yes,
but it's
please.
not the one that I chant to. Just give me a second. My Gohonzon is considerably bigger than this, but this is a Nichiren Gohonzon, a copy of a Nichiren Gohonzon.
Oh wow, okay. So it's like a scroll.
It's a scroll. Yes.
It's very beautiful. It's got it's got the writing on it. It's got the flowers. It's blue and gold and red. That's amazing. I mean, your one is, in terms of your height and your size, how big is it in comparison to you?
Mine is about 2 feet tall and about 1+ feet wide.
Okay. And you hang that on the wall.
Well, I have it in a box, but if I didn't have so many animals like my wolf, I would just keep it out. But
Okay.
because I need to protect it, I keep it in a box called a Buddhism.
Okay, okay. I thought when you were talking about it that it was going to be some type of gourd almost, or statue type object. I didn't realize it was going to be a scroll. That's really interesting for me.
It's a scroll because we follow the law and not any particular person, except the Buddha.
It's when you say that as well, I always go back to 12-step programs that say that you have to find um you have to find some type of relationship with a higher power. And that higher power is obviously not a person in terms of 12-step programs. And if it turns out to be a person, then it turns a bit culty, which is similar to an episode I did recently with a member of a movement called Straightway, where the person that led that group claimed to be that higher power that would help them to recover from addiction. So that's a very fine line to tread, in my opinion. So we've talked a little bit about your experience with SGI. I just wanted to go into demon worshipping. That is a part of SGI as far as I'm aware.
They have talked about devils and demons, yes. Devils and demons are on the Gohonzon, but so are people. So devils and demons are more emotional, terrible emotional states, I feel. Me personally, I've never seen a devil or a demon except people who want to fight or go to war or something like that,
I thought you were going to say Donald Trump, and I was thinking, well.
Him
So
too.
you mentioned about recruiting your mother into the movement, and she has since left too. So what is the relationship like now with your parents and those family members and friends that you disconnected with?
Well, they're all deceased. My mother loved me unconditionally, so that's great. But she left the practice. She stopped practicing because she came to the realization that it was a cult too. And my father was just happy that I was becoming more disciplined. So at the one thing, Soka Gakkai has the same, more or less, practice as other Nichiren Buddhists, but they have different doctrines. And my fault isn't so much with their religious practice; it's with their chanting. It's with their doctrines, their principles. They have no principles. Their principles changed on a dime.
We've spoken briefly about a very successful blog that you have, and a particular blog post that you have written around SGI and SGI being a cult and why it might be labeled that way. So the name of your blog is Eagle Peak Blog, and this particular post that I wanted to talk about has had at least 50,000 hits, and it is all about why SGI is a cult. And you mentioned in your blog post that not all SGI members are brainwashed zombies, but SGI itself is an authoritarian movement with authoritarian leadership.
Yes, it's whatever directive comes from the top, everyone under them, the zone leaders, the territory leaders, the regional leaders, the headquarters leaders, the chapter leaders, they all must follow the directives from the national leaders. They study exactly what they want you to study, and that's part of their brainwashing. For a whole 2 years, we studied the heritage of the ultimate law of life. as if that was the only writing of Nichiren that was important. And even the writing wasn't important. It was Daisaku Ikeda's commentary on the writings.
It's really interesting because you've been in all of these leadership positions, obviously apart from the leadership of SGI itself, although you did meet its leader, who hasn't been seen by anyone for 10 years. When you were in these positions, were you given any type of training, or were you told how to do the teachings? Where did that come from? Because there's obviously a hierarchy at play here, and you worked your way through that hierarchy. So I'm just wondering how you were taught to do that.
Every week at the meetings, and sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a week, you were told how to teach, how to practice, how to study. And, if you went away from the teachings of Daisaku Ikeda, you were reprimanded. You were told, no, we're not studying the Lotus Sutra now. We're studying the writing of Daisaku Ikeda.
And when you say reprimanded, what were the types of what does that entail? Does that entail like shunning in front of the entire group, or are you taken to one side and spoken to by the leaders?
Either way, both.
Okay. So when you are a lower level, lower tier member, you are taught how to lead by the group leaders.
Yes.
And then when you're a group leader, you're taught how to lead by the men's division leaders.
Yes.
And when you're a men's division leader, you're then taught how to lead by the chapter leaders.
Up and up and up and up.
And then above the chapter leaders, there's that big position that you held where you managed to get to meet Daisaku Ikeda.
It all comes from the top.
Okay, so trickle down effect. Did Daisaku Ikeda give you any words of wisdom on how to continue on your journey?
He said, with these Juzu beads, never stop chanting.
And are you supposed to use the beads while you chant like they would? I've done an episode on the Hare Krishnas, and I know that they are encouraged to chant basically all day, every day.
Right now I'm chanting about 15 minutes in the morning and 15 at night. I usually chant until I feel happy. So I don't feel that it's necessary like I used to in SGI to chant 3 hours a day for 2 months, 2 hours a day for 3 months, 7 hours a day for a week, 10, 12 hours a day for a long chant. No, I don't think that's necessary. I think, it's not so much the chanting for hours and hours. It's the faith. Faith is first and foremost in this Buddhism, a confidence.
And when you would chant for those periods of time, when you were in SGI, did you ever feel that you came anywhere close to where you get to now when you chant?
Only once. But I don't think it's because of the SGI. It was because of the Lotus Sutra.
How do you think this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, has affected the message of SGI? Do you think that people are able to have time at home and not have to go to all of these meetings and have all of this responsibility? Or do you think that there being a global pandemic is going to further SGI's message of burning in hellfire and all of that nasty stuff?
That they're gonna lose hundreds and thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of members, because it's very important. Their life-to-life, they call it, life-to-life communication. They do have TV shows and advertisements on TV in Japan. In America, they don't, and people are searching. They're not. They try to have their Zoom meetings every night to keep people in the fold, but they're not going to keep people in the fold because they're going to read and study and see what a cult SGI is. And they're not going to have a person to mentor them, to teach them the ways of SGI. And I think they're going to lose members, thankfully, many of them, and they'll come to real Buddhism, you know.
Brilliant. So I wanted to just go back to something you spoke about before in terms of money generated by SGI and how they might be losing money during this pandemic as well as members. Were you ever responsible for generating money for SGI through fundraising, and how are they able to purchase real estate, not just through dodgy dealings with people that work in the industry, but actually able to have so much money in assets?
Well, investments, I'm sure they have so much money, they invested a lot of it, especially in real estate. But yes, I would promote, especially during the May contribution, I would tell the people they can improve their financial karma by giving to SGI. And I would collect money and subscriptions to their newspapers, and they had goals to reach. And let's say the goal was 20,000 new newspapers and magazines. And let's say you didn't meet the goal, they would encourage you to tell the leaders or the other members to buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subscriptions and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So what was the name of this magazine and how often was it released?
The World Tribune. It used to be the magazine, that was the newspaper, the World Tribune, and the magazine used to be the Seikyo Times, but then it became Living Buddhism magazine.
Okay, and these just come out regularly. They're continuously in print.
Yes, every month, I think.
Okay, so they've obviously got lots of different streams of revenue coming in, and people buying into the propaganda. What sort of content would these magazines and newspapers contain?
Maybe Daisaku Ikeda was mentioned 75 or 100 times, and Namu Myoho Renge Kyo was mentioned a couple times, and Gohanzon may or may not have been mentioned. Shakyamuni Buddha was never mentioned. It was all Daisaku Ikeda, every page. And they'd have members' experience, but they would give all the credit to the guru, Daisaku Ikeda.
Okay, right, okay. And I mean, I just wanted to go back to your blog quickly. For anybody else that wanted to read it, I will link the blog in my show notes.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I obviously it's extremely informative and very well written.
So they can curse me.
I would recommend all of my listeners to just go and have a read of it. It's Eagle Peak blog. Again, I'll put it in the show notes.
I have more than 1 million views since 2008.
That's incredible. What an amazing feat that is. And I think that just goes to show you as well how many people are going online to read information about SGI and the truth behind the control methods that it could be using on its members.
My blog is about 60% pure Lotus Sutra and the writings of Nichiren, and it's about 30% on the dangers of the Soka Gakkai, and about 10% speaking about other sects and things like that.
Okay, very good, very interesting. I do recommend people going to look at Mark's blog. One of the
It's
things I particularly liked about that post in particular was the quote by Stephen Hassan that you had in that post that said, quote, "Nobody joins a cult, they just postpone the decision to leave."
that's correct. I believe
And
that. Yes.
do you feel like that was the same with you? Do you feel like you just postponed leaving that sect for a while?
About 6 months or a year uh, before when I started to have my doubts. And
Hmm.
then it was that straw that broke the camel's back, a combination of my wife not getting better and them not talking about the Lotus Sutra or Nichiren, and everything was Ikeda this and Ikeda that.
Hmm. Hmm. I can hear Wolf growling. Is he growling at my voice?
Oh no, that's not Wolfie. That's my Springer Spaniel. She's got an itchy tushy.
Oh, and she's getting angry.
No, not angry. She's scratching her butt on my washing machine.
Hey, whatever itches the scratch, you know.
Yes, yes.
So
But my just to give you, my blog is markrogo.blogspot.com.
yes, and that's Rogo, Rogow.
Yes, yes.
And I just have one last question before I hand it over to you to talk about anything you think we may have missed. And that is, do you have any notable experiences, positive or negative, during your time within SGI that might be worth mentioning to our listeners?
In retrospect, nothing positive. I might have been a neurosurgeon instead of a general practitioner if I had not been in SGI. That's one regret that I have. Um, uh, Negative. Um, I became a cult member. What could be more negative than that? Alienating family and friends because of the cult. And if they didn't join the cult, then I didn't have time for them, other people. And I sort of regret that. And I regret that my wife had to go through so much grief and illness because she couldn't overcome these bad things in her life until we quit the SGI. And then she could devote more time. She was a group leader. Then she could devote more time to herself.
Recovery.
Yes. Yes.
So, do you feel like you were that you had to compromise with your medical training because you had to consider SGI in your qualifications?
Yes, although I was a very good test taker and I did very good on my board exams. So all was in the long run. My medical practice was rewarding, but not because of SGI, because of my own efforts and talents.
Do you feel like there was a moment in your history where you had to sit down and decide between neurosurgeon and SGI?
Yes, I think because of um, my time spent in SGI, I could not devote the time to my surgical residency like I would have liked.
And in terms of finances, was there financial exploitation with the amount you had to spend to travel around spreading the word of SGI, and also how much you may have donated from your own pocket to the movement itself?
Fortunately, the banks took care of my financing, so of course, I had to pay back all my loans, but that SGI had nothing to do with it. Although there were times when I didn't have quite as much money as I would have liked to have because of my donations to the SGI and my time, mostly time. It's just like work. you work, you expect to get paid. But if you're working for the SGI organization, you're not going to get paid unless you're a paid salaried leader. And you're not going to be a salaried leader unless you devote all your time to the Soka Gakkai.
So there are paid positions available within the movement.
Yes, but they're few and far between.
Right. Okay.
And they pay the Americans like they do their Japanese people.
Right. Okay. And obviously the cost of living is different in every part of the world.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So that's all the questions that I have on my list. I didn't know if there was anything you thought we'd missed or anything you wanted to add.
So just one thing. There's no intermediary in real Buddhism. The Buddha said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." SGI is all intermediary. They quit the priest because the priest stated we were the intermediary, but SGI, all they made was Daisaku Ikeda the intermediary. The mentor is indispensable for one's enlightenment in the SGI, and there's only one mentor, Daisaku Ikeda. So that's my main message. There's no intermediary in true Buddhism, in real Buddhism.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I think that's everything, Mark. I'm really happy with the way our interview has gone, and I feel like I've learned so much from being able to get to sit down with you and listen to your words of wisdom and your years of experience. So thank you so much for coming and sharing that with me today. It's been so insightful and really interesting.
I really enjoyed it, and anytime you feel like you want to ask me something, just write me or call me. I love talking to you. Yes. One other thing I'd like to conclude. A cult does not go by the scriptures. And any religion in the world, whether it be Islam or Hindu or Christianity, the true believers are scriptural practitioners. But SGI does not go by the scriptures. So that's one thing I would conclude, that if you follow the teachings, you can't go wrong. If you follow a person, you're bound to go wrong.
I mean, even when I was younger, I was told by somebody that we lived by the seaside, and I was told that all seagulls pooed at the same time. So I would go around telling everybody that all seagulls pooed at the same time. And just because it's me believing in that 100% doesn't make it true, doesn't mean anybody I tell it to should believe me without questioning and follow me as a 6-7-year-old child who thinks all seagulls poo at the same time. Or when people would say, well, what's your reasoning behind that? And I'd say, well, explains all the bird poo. And that was enough for me at that age. So definitely.
I think Daisaku Ikeda poos.
He's I mean, maybe not now, who knows. I mean, we have no way of really knowing whether he's still around or not. Maybe in a week's time he'll make some crazy news appearance and I'll have to email you and say, there he is, I've seen him. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, that would be an interesting email, wouldn't it? Anyway, I'm going to say good night, Mark, and thank you so much for your time. I really look forward to sharing this finished episode with you, and I really, really hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That is the end of this week's episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or following me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm always looking for new suggestions on conspiracies and cults to cover, so please feel free to get in touch with me and let me know what you'd like to hear. I'm your speaker Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.